welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 487, and today's date is October 8th, 2014, and the title of this episode is U.S., UK, and France Ready for a Syria No-Fly Buffer Zone. Now, we can see they have definitely been preparing for this. They have been bombing all the areas in the east and the north, removing the infrastructure, removing the air bases, removing the oil refineries, pretty much obliterating Syria. So economically, Syria runs into trouble. They realize they need to clear this area out to make sure they have complete access between Turkey and Syria, and there is no other fighting forces or people that are going to give them problems in this area, and this is why they're clearing out this entire area at this time. And we can see things are really starting to ramp up, and of course US, UK, and France are looking at the situation saying, yes, this is exactly what we want. Are they ready to do it at this moment? Most likely not. I think they're going to push this a little bit harder, make sure they get their 5,000 to 15,000 paid mercenaries all ready to go. Make sure they have the event ready to go so they can put boots on the ground. And we can see this is all really starting to ramp up right now, and they are really pushing hard for this. Let's get into the economic collapse news. Now, we understand a couple days ago Obama came out and said, listen, the student loan problem is not going to melt down the economy. Now, of course, as we've been seeing, everything that he's been saying is always the opposite. It is never exactly what he says. And this goes for any government official. When they're out there telling you something, just think the opposite of what they're saying. Now, of course, as we know, the student debt problem is really getting out of hand. It is really starting to skyrocket. A lot of the youths who are coming out of college cannot pay for their student loans, and this is why the government has been coming out with all these modifications, deferring the payments, coming out with new bills that if you work for the government, they'll pretty much get rid of your student loans. They're coming out with all this because they realize the youth of America, they are hurting. But here are some of the facts here, and this is out of End of the American Dream, and they list some of the facts of the student loan bubble here. According to the Wall Street Journal, the class of 2014 is the most indebted ever. In 1994, less than half of all college graduates left school with student loan debt. Today, it is over 70%. Approximately 15% of graduate and professional school students leave school with student loan debt balances in the six figures. At this point, student loan debt has hit a grand total of $1.2 trillion in the United States. The number has grown by about 84% just since 2008. The median net worth of young households have student loan debt is 20% lower than the median net worth of young households that do not have any student loan debt and that are led by someone with only a high school education. Since 2005, student loan debt burdens have absolutely exploded, with salaries for young college graduates have actually declined. Last year, it was being reported that 34.9% of all student loan borrowers under the age of 30 are at least 90 days behind on their student loan payments. One survey found that 27% of those with student loan debt moved back in with their parents after college, and we have discussed this many, many times. These people coming out of college, they cannot find jobs in their major, and what happens is they take part-time jobs. They move back in with their parents. They can't make the student loan payments. Those have to be deferred or modified in some way, and a lot of them pretty much don't even pay it. And we're seeing that only 28% of Americans know that the U.S. government can garnish their wages and withhold tax refunds if student loan debts are not repaid. And student loan debts follow you forever. You cannot get rid of them. Now, I talk about housing quite a bit, and we're seeing that housing prices are really starting to come down. I took a look around the country today, and I'm really seeing that housing prices are really dropping quite quickly. And of course, they realize we're moving out of the summer months, the warm weather, we're moving into fall, then into winter, and this is a terrible time for housing. They realize this, and the housing market, the traffic to these people who are selling their houses is basically starting to dry up, and people are out there saying, listen, we are not in the market right now because we don't have jobs, we're underemployed, we don't have the savings, we don't have the credit, and this is why we see the mortgage applications completely plummeting. They're around 70% decline right now, and they are going further and further down. And if these interest rates tick up, we're going to see huge amount of problems. But the construction rate for single-family homes is about 40% below its long-term average. And I'm sure many of you were not aware that 9 out of every 100 homes in this country is vacant at this time. It's part of the shadow inventory that housing market promoters hide from view as much as possible. Even more stunning is the decline in home ownership rate for the under 35 demographic. Historically, the first-time home buyer is around 40% of all home sales. Currently, it is only around 28%. Everything in the housing market hinges on this first-time buyer's ability and willingness to buy a home. And this is going to get worse as time goes on, because you have to remember those people who are graduating college who have this huge amount of student loans, who are living with their parents or working at part-time jobs, they are not going to be able to save for a home. They don't have the income to buy a home, and they're burdened with a huge amount of debt. So it does not look good at all. Investment buying and flippers is really starting to fade right now from the scene. The housing sale numbers, stripped of statistical manipulation, should really start to tail off pretty quickly, because we're starting to see hedge funds, investment companies leaving the market. We're seeing flippers saying, you know something, prices are coming down. They're not appreciating right now. I'm getting out of the market. And this whole entire system is about to come crashing down. Now, the Fed had their meeting today, and they came out with their minutes. The Fed officials saw a global slowdown among risks to U.S. outlook. The FOMC said some developments could undermine financial stability, bubbles. Fed saw rising dollar as risk to exports growth. And we can see right now all of this is starting to come together, where the economy here in the United States, and especially around the world, in Europe and other places, it's starting to really fall apart. Now, of course, in the United States, they can create money, they can manipulate the calculations, they can make it look really great. In the European nations, it's a little bit harder because they have to go to the Eurozone to get more money to support their government, to support the country. Here in the United States, they can just push a button and all of a sudden the government is allowed to borrow from the Fed, and it makes it very easy to pretty much cover up everything that's going on. And we've seen this. If we go back to 1929, we saw how Europe completely fell apart and America was still doing well. All eyes were on the stock market. It was hitting around 400 or so points. But again, everything just fell apart because it is a domino effect. Everything just starts to fall apart, and the stock market is the last indicator to show that the economy definitely has failed. And this is exactly what we're going to see as time goes on, because we've been looking at the real economic conditions. We're looking at retail, we're looking at housing, we're looking at unemployment, and we're not looking at the governmental numbers. We're looking at really what's going on out there, and we see things completely collapsing around us. We're seeing inflation, prices going up in the supermarket, where we're seeing milk, meat, fresh vegetables, fresh fruit, liquor, all going up in price. And again, energy, food, this is not included in the calculation of inflation, so they pretty much bypass that completely. Now, the IMF just came out today and said China just overtook the U.S. to become the world's largest economy, according to the International Monetary Fund. IMF measures both GDP in market exchange terms and in terms of purchasing power. On the purchasing power basis, China is overtaking the U.S. right now and becoming the world's biggest economy. And again, China and Russia, they've been making deals all around the globe. China has been making bilateral trade agreements with many different countries: New Zealand, Australia, Switzerland, UK, Canada, African countries. And they're doing this, Russia, I should say, they're doing this to pretty much bypass the dollar. And all these other countries are preparing themselves for when the dollar completely collapses. They are making sure that they have protection, and this is what they're doing. Now, it looks like Australia is getting kind of like an NDAA that the United States has. Following Australia's passing of draconian anti-terror laws late September, the country took another step in the direction. This may allow its security services to detain anyone without charge, even before other methods of questioning have been exhausted. So we're starting to see many countries start to take this on, and the reason for this is because they need to go above the rights, which they really can't, especially here in the United States. The Bill of Rights, the Constitution, this is the law of the land, but they try to get around it with all these other laws, and they're all really unconstitutional, and I'm sure in the other countries they really don't hold weight, and maybe some countries they do, but they're trying to bypass everything and pick up those people who are going to be a threat to their authority, because we have to understand that this entire system is coming crashing down. They need to find out who is going to be a problem, put them on a list, as we saw this in Ukraine. Again, you have to remember, the central bankers, the United States government, were in control of the Ukrainian forces when they started to hit the southeastern town of Lugansk, Donetsk. What they did is they went to the police department there and said, hey, give us a list of those people who you believe would be a threat or a problem. They gave them the list, and the anti-terrorist forces went after those people. The same thing is happening here in the U.S. and in many other countries where they're making social profiles of everyone. The NSA, the DHS fusion centers, FBI, they're all correlating their data, creating social profiles on everyone. They're tracking everyone. This is why they can't find anything else, because their whole entire system is focused on the people inside the country, because there are no real terrorists out there. Those are all made up to make us believe that there are terrorists there. And whenever they want to use terrorists, they just go ahead, they create a group, they put it out there, and they say, yes, now we have terrorists. I mean, look, they created Khorasan out of thin air. The Islamic State, as we know, has been created as a proxy army to be pushed into Syria. And what they're doing is they're using all their technology to spy on the people instead of what is going on in the rest of the world. And again, they also use it for blackmail. They use it to steal investment ideas or patent ideas, and everything is geared towards finding those people who are going to be a problem from when the collapse comes. And this is exactly what they're doing. Now, it looks like Twitter is going to sue the U.S. government. Twitter has filed a lawsuit against the U.S. government so it can release more information about the national security requests. The company wants to publish its full transparency report. It alleges that its First Amendment rights to free speech are being violated by rules that prevent it from disclosing the quantity of national security requests it receives. Now, we understand this. The government has no warrant whatsoever. They're just requesting information from Google, Yahoo, Facebook, and Twitter, and we can see right now this is completely unconstitutional. It violates our Fourth Amendment, and Twitter wants to let everyone know how many times this has happened, and it looks like they don't want this to happen, and this is why they're suing at this time. Now, in Pennsylvania, it seems like the police can pull over people and search your car without a warrant as long as they have probable cause. Now, again, what makes up probable cause? I think you might have drugs in there. You might have a weapon, or you might have I mean, they can make up anything at this point. And basically what this means is they completely violated your Fourth Amendment, and they're just going to go ahead and search your car wherever they want. We've seen this in New York. We've seen it in Detroit with the stop and frisk law. Of course, a judge came out and said this is completely unconstitutional, but they were doing it for a very, very long time, which is a complete violation of your Fourth Amendment. These rights are in place. The Founding Fathers put these in place to protect the people from a tyrannical government, from a tyrannical system. And they realized eventually the people here in the United States would have to fight once again to reestablish the rights. And again, we are born with these rights. These are not privileges. The government cannot take them away. And this is why they create thousands upon thousands of laws trying to limit these rights. But again, if you really read the rights and you really read what's going on here, they don't even have the right to limit your rights. Now, it looks like in Ferguson they are getting ready, or Missouri authorities, they are getting ready and they're drawing up contingency plans and seeking intelligence from U.S. police departments on an out-of-state agitators, fearing there could be an uprising after the trial of this Ferguson police officer who shot Michael Brown. So we can see right now they are preparing for something to go haywire here, to go crazy, and we're seeing it depending on how this turns out, and they're really worried about outside groups coming in. Now, we understand that the government loves to pretty much create the situation where there is rioting. They bring in outside groups. They start making things go completely crazy there by people throwing rocks, bottles, setting things on fire, getting other people to join in, and they would love to have this spread across the country because they would love to implement martial law across the country. And we can see right now they are trying to do this once again. So we have two things going on right now. We have Ebola at this time, where they could declare medical martial law. They also are trying to gin up these riots, these race riots, so people take sides, and this has nothing to do with race whatsoever. This was completely created by the government. It is part of their agenda. It is part of their agenda to suspend the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. It is their agenda to declare martial law and to control the people, because they realize this collapse is coming, and you can see they're trying to push this agenda once again. Now, the FBI is out there, and it looks like their program has gone live. The FBI Counterterrorism Division is calling on Americans to report on fellow citizens engaged in suspicious activities to help identify possible terrorists. So basically what they're saying is they want everyone to tell on everyone if you believe someone to be a terrorist. And we saw this back in Nazi Germany, where people told on other people. If you spotted someone doing something or helping someone, they got either money or food or something like that. The same thing is happening here. New York already has that law where if you suspect someone of having a illegal weapon, report them and you can receive $500, and you have to have no proof whatsoever. We'll just start a whole full investigation with absolutely no proof. And again, this law in New York was just to point out all those people who have weapons. This law is to have everyone scared and to have everyone tell on each other. And we can see, and this makes everyone paranoid, first of all, and we can see they're really trying to push this. Now, it looks like with Ebola in Sierra Leone, it seems that the grave diggers have gone on strike, and what they're doing is they're leaving the people in the streets. The burial teams have gone on strike over unpaid wages, and they're just leaving the bodies wherever they are, and they're not burying them at this time. And of course, this is going to make the situation a lot worse. And Liberia, I discussed this before, where Liberia will not allow journalists to take photos of these sick people, but they're going a step further now, where journalists must obtain written okay to report from health centers. If they want to even report on something, they need to get the okay. Liberia is preventing journalists from reporting Ebola-related stories from healthcare centers in the country and from interviewing Liberians in regions affected by the disease unless they obtain written permission from the government. Now, this is very interesting because we have the United States soldiers who arrived in Liberia, and now all of a sudden you need to get permission, the journalists need to get permission to write up or to look in the health centers to see what's going on and write a story about it, which is very suspicious in itself. And again, if you wanted to say, oh, yes, I see victims or I see many different patients, but something else is going on right now. And of course, they're using the guise that, oh, we're protecting the people's rights, oh, we're not letting this out. But again, if someone just wanted to write about the entire situation that was going on, they're like, we're not really seeing the bodies. Well, we're seeing many of the bodies and they're just laying in the streets. Whatever it is, they should have the right to write about it. And this concerns me, where they're trying to stop the journalists from doing their job. Now, in Syria, the Islamic State, very interestingly, have the same type of thing where they don't want the journalists out there writing about something that's not approved by them. And we see this with many governments like UK, the United States, Australia, where they would like to implement laws where you just can't go out and report on things. In the UK, they want this approved by the government. Here in the United States, they want you to be licensed, and anyone else cannot report on anything. And we can see they're going down the same track in Liberia. Now, it looks like thousands of U.S. troops may be living in 10 cities in Liberia and supporting the fight against Ebola for about a year or more, or until the deadly outbreak appears to be under control. One more Spanish healthcare worker was admitted to a hospital for monitoring for Ebola today, bringing that number to about 6. And we can see right now that the protocols aren't really being followed in many of these countries, especially here in the U.S. People are not wearing any type of protective gear, and I talked about this yesterday, and we can see right now that they're just letting it go if this is absolutely true. And what we're seeing is there are cases in treatment. There are cases in Madrid. There's people that were cured in Paris and in London. There's a case in Oslo who's in treatment. There's one in Frankfurt in treatment. We know the one in Dallas just passed away. That person's dead. There's a second one that is in contact with Thomas Edward Duncan, and it looks like the police are trying to track him down, but that's all I know at this point, and he might have Ebola. We know there's someone in Nebraska. There is someone in Atlanta, and we can see there are many people in West Africa who have Ebola. Now, Connecticut is going to declare preemptive Ebola health emergency, and they're going to allow quarantines in the state. Homeland Security, they have unveiled additional, more stringent monitoring of all travelers to the U.S. for the Ebola virus. The Homeland Security Department has ordered agents at airports and other ports of entry to observe everyone coming into the United States for potential signs of Ebola infection. Now, how are they really going to tell if they have Ebola or if they have the flu? These temperature thermal machines are not going to work because you can take an ibuprofen, an aspirin, it can bring your temperature down, and you can walk right through them and they will not tell you anything. But these workers are just going to be taking anyone that might have a symptom, because when you look at the flu and you look at Ebola, they are very, very similar. And of course, when someone's walking into an airport, or you really have to be very, very observant, because listen to some of these symptoms. Here's the ones for the flu. Fever. You take an ibuprofen, that's gone. Somebody that has a cough, maybe they're not coughing at that particular time. They have a sore throat. How can you tell? Runny or stuffy nose, muscle or body aches, very difficult to tell. Somebody has a headache. How can you tell this? Someone is very tired, very difficult to realize. And vomiting, yes, if someone's vomiting in front of you, you definitely be able to see that. Now, those are the symptoms for the flu. Now, the ones for Ebola are fever, headache, muscle pain, weakness, vomiting, but maybe you're not at that point, a stomach ache. So right now, these two are very, very similar. And how is the TSA really going to notice if somebody has a headache, if somebody has muscle aches? Because once you take that ibuprofen, it just doesn't help your fever. It helps you relieve some of the muscle aches. It helps you relieve the sore throat. It helps you, it takes care of pretty much a lot. And people can just walk right through, and these people have no idea whatsoever if they're infected at all. So this entire system really is not going to work. Now, CDC Chief Frieden is out there talking about the borders, about flights, and Tom Frieden wrote that sealing the borders, restricting travel to and from countries with widespread cases of Ebola and otherwise isolating communities infected with deadly disease increases people's distrust of government, making them less likely to cooperate to help stop the spread of the virus. Now, let me just get this straight. by closing the border in Texas where people are just coming over and stopping them and having the border agents stop them, I don't believe this is going to really have people lose faith in the government. People have already lost faith in the government. What this will do is stop all those illegals coming over that could be infected and have them go through the proper channels of coming in through the border, which most likely they will not do. Now, at the border checkpoints, they should have the same ridiculous screening that they have at the airport with their thermal and their questionnaires, which really is not going to stop. Maybe they'll catch a couple, but it's really not going to stop. But again, this is a precaution that they could take. And having flight or warnings about flights of going to these countries is not unusual, because the United States does this every time they invade a country or have a false flag event. Remember all those warnings in Libya, in Sudan, in Somalia, in Iraq, where they give travel warnings. They tell you not to go to these countries, and basically they can do the same thing. Now, the flights coming in from these countries, from Liberia and stuff like that, they could have them go to a specific checkpoint or just stop the flights from coming in, which would definitely slow down the disease, the virus and the disease. But we can see they don't want to do this. Of course, it would hurt the airlines, their profitability, and it has nothing to do with the government. It would stop the infected people from just leaping over the border and just coming in as illegals and infecting people. We've seen that many of the illegals have many different diseases, and we have very strange diseases running around in the United States, which was brought over by the illegals. And this would not have any effect on the way people view government at this point, because most of the people have no trust in the government. They realize the government is not working for them. But you can see right now, they are not going to do any of this. Secretary of State John Kerry is out there, and he's during a press conference. He is saying that there is an urgent need to contain the spread of Ebola in the wake of the first Ebola death in the United States. But he made it very clear that there's going to be no travel restrictions. There's going to be absolutely no stopping the illegals coming in from over the border. So really, we can't do anything, which contradicts what he just said. And again, they're looking at the airline profits, because that they start using travel restrictions. Now, when I say travel restrictions, I'm not saying stop people from flying to different places. You can give warnings to those countries that have Ebola, just like they do when they're attacking or invading or taking over a government in another country, creating a false flag event. They can do that today. There is absolutely no problem. And we can have the travel restrictions on those countries in West Africa coming into the United States, which would slow down the spread of the virus. And there's absolutely no problem with this whatsoever. Now, Obama is out there, and again, you have to remember, everything that he says is always the opposite. Obama downplayed the chances of Ebola spreading within the United States, and of course we had one case of Ebola that came in, and now he's out there saying that the odds of an epidemic here are extremely low. Now, of course, whenever he says is always the opposite, so we can expect something to really ramp up, actually, because when he told us there's no boots on the ground in Iraq, they're sending boots on the ground in Iraq. And we can see that this is definitely going to pretty much go widespread as time goes on if they do not get it under control. It looks like the UK is sending around 750 troops to help contain Ebola in Sierra Leone. So now we have the UK with military soldiers down in that area. And the CDC is suggesting a hermetically sealed casket, and we have to think back and remember who has these hermetically sealed caskets. Well, they have them in the FEMA camps. CDC says that in the event of an Ebola outbreak in the U.S., bodies of the deceased would be required to be buried within a hermetically sealed casket, which would prevent the escape of microbes during funerals. The CDC coffins in Madison, Georgia, though, are designed to prevent spread of infection. In fact, the patent for those coffins confirms that they are meant for the burial of cremation of bodies exposed to infectious diseases. This would suggest that the CDC has stockpiled such coffins in places like Madison, Georgia, specifically in preparation for a viral outbreak, meaning the CDC has been expecting the deaths of hundreds of thousands of Americans due to infection for at least the past 6 years. That is long period of preparation. So we can see they kind of are prepared for this. They knew something like this was going to happen, and we'll have to see. Now, like I said before, we really don't know if this has been planned or if the government is so inept that they don't know what to do in this situation, just like in Katrina and all the other places where they haven't planned the disaster. Or, this is a real outbreak and they've lost control in West Africa. It's gone wild and they really can't control it at this point. Now, there are strange things happening in North Korea. It seems like the leader there, Kim Jong-un, has not been seen. And what's very interesting, and there's 7 different points here. One is North Korea's capital is locked down, and people can't go in or out since September 27th. 2, Kim Jong-un has not been seen for over a month. Number 3, Kim missed one of the country's biggest annual events. Number 4, North Korean officials visited South Korea unannounced. Number 5, there are rumors of increasing dissent in North Korea. 6, Kim has carried out frequent purges of military. He purged about 200 military officials within the north, and we can see that, who knows, maybe there is a coup going on, or maybe it was created by the United States that was in North Korea, or something else happened. 7, a prominent defector says Kim is a figurehead. A prominent North Korean defector has asserted that North Korea has been in the midst of a political upheaval for a while now. Now, the question is, we have not seen the leader, he's not been around, and all of these things are going on all at once. Now, it looks like Russia is cozying up with Germany. Russia will acquire Europe's largest underground gas storage facility this autumn from Germany's BASF, continuing the development of its Nord Stream operations. In return, the Germans will get access to large gas reserves in western Siberia. In terms of sheer size, the storage center is a crucial element in energy security, both for Germany and the nearby Netherlands. The deal will help Gazprom get a footing in the gas market in northern and western Europe after opening its Nord Stream double pipeline that runs under the Baltic Sea to Germany. It is common practice for Gazprom to use European gas storage facilities. It currently stores gas in Austria, UK, Germany, Serbia, Latvia, Belarus, and Armenia. So we can see they are definitely preparing, and you can see they are just making deals all across Europe. Germany is cozying up to Russia right now, and again, they realize what is happening. War is coming. They're making sure they're taken care of, and we can see this is definitely what's going on right now. Now, Russia is out there, and the head of the Lower House Committee for Defense has said that the Western sanctions that were placed on Russia should repeal the law allowing NATO to transport military cargo and personnel through Russian territory. The federal law ratifying the Russian-NATO cooperation agreement within the Partnership for Peace program was passed in mid-2007. It allows the Western military bloc to use Russian territory to transfer its cargo and forces, including weapons and things like the combat aircraft. And Russia's saying, we should just get rid of this at this point because they place sanctions on us, and there's no reason to be cozying up to NATO at this time because NATO sees us as a threat. And this is exactly the way they want it, because as time goes on, we understand Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, Syria, these are all the enemies that they are demonizing at this time, because they have to make it perfectly clear when World War III starts who we will be attacking. Now, it looks like Ukraine is completely falling apart. They are steps away from a default. The Fitch rating agency has downgraded Kiev's long-term rating, and their Ukrainian capital failed to repay its domestic $87 million debt. The move could be classified as a restricted default, and they have to make this payment by October 10th. Now, it seems like Kiev is continually maneuvering their armed forces, and it really does seem like they are getting prepared to have this offensive against the southeastern people and then go into Crimea. According to Ukrainian presidential advisor, thousands of much better trained troops are now in rotation in the east of the country. Since the ceasefire, the Ukrainian military has been rotating their armed forces. I mean, several hundred armored vehicles have been rotated. They're bringing in more advanced weapons, and we can see right now they are definitely preparing to do something. Thousands of much better trained troops are now in rotation in Ukraine. They've been trained, they've been prepared, they received better weapons, and Poroshenko also said Ukraine is doing everything possible to make the army stronger, and he's pushing in millions more to build this barrier between Ukraine and Russia. And we can see what they're doing. They're trying to contain the entire situation to make sure that Russia cannot get in any way whatsoever, and they want the entire situation contained, and we can see they are definitely beefing up to do something. We need to watch the situation very, very carefully. Now, out in Yemen, we understand the tribes have been making great gains. They've been removing the puppet regime in Yemen, and it seems like the tribes now are looking to take over, yes, the oil fields, and it looks like they're maneuvering to take up and capture the Bab al-Mandeb Strait leading to the Suez Canal, as well as oil fields in the Marib province. So we can see right now they're making their move, and they understand they need to take control of the oil fields to control the oil, and this is where the central bankers start to come in. This is where the U.S. government says, no, 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 no. We will not allow this to happen. We saw this happen in Libya when the tribes of Libya tried to load up a tanker. They put oil on this ship. They sailed it out. A couple hours later, the U.S. SEAL team got onto the ship. They brought it right back. They're not going to let this oil be sold not using the U.S. dollar. And we can see once they capture the oil fields, this is game over for Yemen. We're going to see something else ginned up to have the United States central bankers go back into Yemen. And we can see they're already planning on this by saying that the Islamic State is in each one of these countries. They haven't said it yet in Yemen, but they have been saying that there's terrorists inside Yemen that might try some type of terrorist attack here in the United States using planes. Now, Iran is out there, and they are saying that they stopped a plot by the Islamic State inside Iran. Officials said the Islamic State fighters plan to attack a so-called holy city. They said more than 130 suspected Islamic State members were arrested. Significant quantities of explosives that were to be used in the holy city in the country were neutralized. They rammed a vehicle laden with 600 kilograms of explosives into the wall of the checkpoint building, and a huge blast took place, and the checkpoint walls collapsed. But after about 3.5 hours of clashes, they couldn't attain their goal. And we can see the United States central bankers, Israel, UK, would love to have the Islamic State inside Iran, because wherever the Islamic State is, that's where the United States government can go. Now, the U.S. is angry with Turkey because they are not doing their part. They want them to put boots on the ground inside Syria. Do you know why they want this to happen? Because they are a NATO member, and they want to implement Article 5. They want Turkey to be attacked, and we can see that Turkey is not going along with this. They're not putting boots on the ground right now. Yes, they had a vote in Parliament that they'd take place, but they have made no decision in what to do in this area right now, and they have not decided to go ahead and start airstrikes or anything like that. Now, Iran is out there, and they're saying, listen, we understand that Kobani has fallen, and we see that the Islamic State is taking over, and the U.S.-led coalition is bombing this area, and Tehran is ready to help the Syrian government in protecting the residents in this town. If the Syrian government requests help, Iran says they will help and bring troops into this area to help the people in this area. Now, out in the news today, it's all over the corporate media, where they're saying, see, Syria had other chemical weapon facilities and they didn't declare it. And basically, they really weren't facilities that held chemical weapons. Basically, they're research and development. There are no chemical weapons in these facilities whatsoever. And Syria just declared it. And what they're saying is the UN inspectors who are looking at all the different chemical weapons areas, basically what Syria said was, you missed these four, and here they are. But of course the corporate media is spinning it around, saying that, see, they're hiding this. Well, if they're hiding it, they wouldn't declare it. They would have kept it a secret. They would have moved it underground. But when the UN inspectors came in, there is nothing in these plants. There are no chemical weapons. And by the way, there are 16 other areas that are kind of like this, that have no chemical weapons in there, that have yet to be destroyed, because they're trying to figure out a way of destroying these areas, and they haven't done it as of yet. But of course they're trying to spin this around. They're trying to make it seem like, oh, now we have to go in there because Syria lied. They have chemical weapons, but they absolutely do not. Now it looks like France, US, UK, they are ready to examine the idea of a Syria buffer zone. The United States and Britain are willing to examine the idea of setting up a buffer zone along Turkey's border with Syria. The buffer zone is an idea that's out there. It's worth examining. It's worth looking at it's worth looking at very, very closely, and this is coming from John Kerry. Now, as soon as this was made public, the White House said, no, 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 no. We're not looking to have a buffer zone or a no-fly zone or anything like that. No, 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 no. This is absolutely not true. We can tell you this for sure, and this is how you know it is true, because as soon as they deny it, you know it is. Just like they said, they're not going to go into Iraq and bomb or bring boots on the ground. President Obama said you can keep your health insurance provider, you can keep your doctor. All of this was fake, phony, and false, and you can see whatever the government officials say is always the opposite. As soon as they denied it, we know it is true, and this is exactly what they're doing. We can see by their strategy of what they've been doing, they definitely have been using the bombing to clear the entire area from the northern part of Syria to the southern part of Turkey, where the two border on each other. They're clearing out that entire area. They destroyed air bases in Raqqa and in other areas where they're destroying the infrastructure, decimating the economy of Syria, and you can see they are definitely prepping, and they're ready to bring in the trained Free Syrian Army, which is made up of one Syrian, the rest are paid mercenaries and terrorists that they created, and they are going to march into Damascus to get Assad. And of course, what's eventually going to happen is you're going to see boots on the ground from the United States. And of course, there is a small problem. We do have Russia on the other side, and we have China on the other side. Now, President Obama is going to be meeting with the Pentagon today, and they're going to update him on the battle against the Islamic State. And we kind of most likely will say maybe boots will be on the ground, or maybe they'll be sending advisors in there, you know, combat-ready Marines who are advisors who are taking a look at the situation in Syria. But again, bringing boots on the ground into a sovereign nation, this is just another level, and we'll have to see how Syria takes this. Now, in my other reports, and we've been talking about this for quite a while, about how all of these cyber attacks on Target, Neiman Marcus, JP Morgan Chase, the nude photos, all of this has been created in the last couple of months. And if you really look back, it really started back in November up until this point, and it's really gone crazy right now. Why? Because they have CISA and CISPA pending in the Senate, and they want that passed. So they're trying to convince everyone that it's time to pass this. And we can see Mike Rogers and other government officials are out there saying the Internet has thrived under innovators free of government intervention, and for the vast majority of us, it is part of our everyday lives. Right now, there is a rampant industrial espionage and cybercrime from foreign hackers, and it is threatening America's economic engine, costing billions of dollars and countless jobs. This country needs meaningful cyber legislation, and we can wait no longer. Well, of course, they already have it ready, so they're just building this up. The House passed CISPA for the second time in April of 2013. The Senate Intelligence Committee passed its own information sharing bill out of the committee in July. The full Senate must act now and pass these bills. Now, of course, the president says, no, I will veto any of these bills that come across my desk. But then why did he create the executive orders that completely support these bills? And why did he create a volunteer executive order where it allows companies to volunteer your private information to the government? No, basically what they're doing is they're trying to push the agenda. They want these laws passed. They want government control over the internet. They want your information. This will not help the people. This will not help the internet. It will help the government officials. That is it. They will help the bankers. We see the FBI, they are out there right now. They want the United States people to help them identify the masked ISIS murderer, and they're calling on everyone to figure out who this person is. Now, with all their technology and their facial recognition and their vein prints on the hands and everything else, they can't figure out who this guy is. Well, of course they can't. They really want to see what the American people are coming up with. They want to know what you're thinking of who this is. And basically what's happening is they're trying to get America all together. Yes, we're trying to find the terrorists. We're trying to work together to beat down the terrorists. This is a plan to try to bring the people together for the main event. And you can see they're trying this over and over again with the beheading videos, which are completely fake, phony, and false, with trying to get everyone together to give us your information. Let's all work together to stop terrorism. And eventually, when this event occurs, the false flag event, all the people will be like, we tried to stop it, and now they're hitting us. Now we have to go to war. This is exactly their agenda. They've been pushing this very hard. They realize the collapse is coming. They have to cover it up some way, somehow. It needs to be blamed on another party. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.